Today we're going to work on cutting the walls for your white model box using your cardboard. So first thing you want to do is you want to grab your architectural scale ruler and make sure that you are in the correct scale. As a reminder, our drawing is in 1/8 inch scale and we will be translating this into 1/4 inch to make our model. So first thing I'm doing is you'll see that I am measuring the width of my stage, so I know how wide the walls need to be for the model box. You should have that measurement written down already from class. You then have to measure the depth of what your model box is going to be. For this model box, we are stopping at where that wall meets the first window, so you only need to get the measurement from that window to the back wall. That entire depth is going to be the depth for the back wall of your theater all the way to the seating portion of your model box. Next, you need to figure out what the depth is for your stage space. Remember, we're going to the front of the proscenium. That is our plaster line that we are using because we are concerned about where that apron starts. We can get the depth of the proscenium added later. So then I'm going to add in that measurement there. And next we need to figure out where our center line is. So center line is the middle of the proscenium. For the Klein Theater, that center line is exactly the middle of the stage space. So that measurement that I wrote down at the beginning, our 44 feet, I'm going to figure out what's half of that. And then I'm going to use that measurement to figure out where the center of my proscenium is going to be. And I write it down on the form. Next, we need to figure out the angles for this apron. Instead of using angles using a protractor or other kinds of drafting techniques, we're going to mark them by graphing them out using our drafting triangles and the established lines that we already have. So I need to get measurements there, so I need to figure out at what point that part of the apron that's by the proscenium starts and at what point the part of the apron towards the audience ends. So I'm going to do a measurement for where that starts. And then I can see that where that apron ends is in line with the thickness of the wall, so I can mark in my 1 foot in from the proscenium and then 6 inches in. And then I copy that on the other side because it's the same on both sides. Now the first step is to make sure that your cardboard is wide enough to handle your model box. This one is not 44 feet, so I can't use it. So I'm going to switch it out for one that I can use. Grab the piece of cardboard that is big enough for you to use without it being terribly oversized because you want to be economical with your choice. You can always take a box and cut it down. So for example, this one has a lot of bends and folds and things that I don't want, so I'm going to use my handy dandy scissors to cut this into much smaller portions to use, and I'm going to cut right along those seam lines that I wouldn't want to use anyways. And when I am done, I take my pieces, I set them off to the side, and I get ready to mark out and measure my floor. Now the first thing to do when measuring and marking your floor segment is to remember that this is the bottom of your model box, so it needs to cover the entire width of your stage space and the entire depth of the part that juts into the auditorium. So find a piece big enough to do so. Next, you're going to want to draw a line as a guideline. Notice I'm going along with the grain of that cardboard. That will make cutting much easier. Find your 1/4 inch markings on your scale ruler and then mark out the 44 feet for the width of your stage space, again, edge to edge. I tend to put a little tick at the bottom and then a little tick at the top so I know where I start and I end. Next, I'm going to carry that line down so that I can get the side walls. So I'm going to use my triangle. I'm going to make sure I'm squared up to that bottom line, and then I'm just going to score my vertical. So draw a line going straight down. Again, always check that you are square, and then you can flip your triangle around and do it from the other side. Finally, you're going to measure out the depth of your model box. So you are going to use that measurement from the back wall all the way to where that window is to mark alongside those verticals that you just scored with your triangle. So using your 1/4 inch scale, draw your measurements down, make a tick mark on either side, and then close the gap. Next, it is time to cut. So if you are using a metal scale ruler, you do not want to use your scale ruler to cut. You want to use the steel cork back ruler because it won't slide. That's important when you try to make a straight line. Line it up alongside your line, grab your X-Acto knife, and then make sure that your blade is fresh. And then what you want to do is you want to cut smoothly and carefully through your cardboard. It will take you multiple passes, and that's absolutely fine. Do not rush it. The fresh blade will make it go faster. You will feel it release easily when it is time for it to come off. Have a nice smooth edge. Do that for the remaining walls, and then you are done with the bottom of your model box. So it's possible to look at your piece as you put it off to the side and go, I don't know which side this is, or which is the width, which is the height. So grab your scale ruler, confirm what the width is, and then you can label it. Here I'm going to put DS for downstage, and US for upstage, and SR for stage right, and an SL for stage left, and then you're good. Now cutting your stage deck is going to be a little bit different. As we mentioned before, you have an apron and you need to take that into account when you go to cut it. So you'll begin the same way. You will score a line to help you identify your back wall, and then you're going to use your triangles to carry your verticals down by lining them up alongside and making sure everything is squared out and straight. You're going to mark out how deep it is. And this is the depth from the back wall to the front of the proscenium, so where that apron begins. It is very important that you keep in mind that you are going to add an apron in, so you do not plan on cutting this part off. Measure out the depth of your apron, and then you're going to have two lines. You're going to have one line for where the proscenium ends and one line for where the apron ends. After we have both of those plotted, we will go back and we will mark out how the apron is shaped. When you are done, cut out all of your walls. You will notice though, I am not cutting out the portion in front of the apron. Label them like before. And then you want to label your center line. Your center line, again, is the midpoint. It's the center of your proscenium. It's going to be the 22 feet to your 44 feet overall. Next, you need to plot out where that apron is going to lie. So first we need to get the edge of the proscenium. So check your measurements for how wide that proscenium is open. Figure it from the center line to the edge, so that would be half of your overall distance. Next, you're going to mark in your 1 foot in from the edge of the proscenium for where that apron starts, and then you're going to measure 6 inches out of that for where the angle is for the apron. Do the same thing on the other side because this is a mirror image, it's symmetrical. So again, 1 foot and your 6 inches. Next, you're going to use your triangle to drop down where the outside edge of your apron is. So go to that furthest mark that you made, that 6 inches off of your 1 foot, and make a mark on your second line, your apron depth line. Flip over your triangle, do it from the same side. You will see how this will work in a second. So again, a little tick mark there so you know where the edge of that apron is going to land. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to play connect the dots. You're going to take and draw from that 1 foot mark in from the proscenium to that 6 inch mark in, and then same on the other side. When you are finished with these, you can compare what you have to the angles that you see on your drafting, and they should make the same shape. They should look identical. Once you've confirmed that the angles look correct, you can cut out all your pieces. Make sure that you try to aim for precision, and I always cut off the bottom first. It makes it easier for me because then I can go in and I can cut my inner pieces out by putting the point of my X-Acto knife right down and controlling the shape. And when you are done, your stage deck should look like so. Next, we're going to work on the walls. So you will notice that when we put this all together, the walls are going to sit on top of the bottom of the model box, but they need the stage deck to fit inside of them because the walls are outside of the stage deck. So we are going to remove a tiny bit of material from either side. To figure out how much material you need to remove, you need to figure out the thickness of the material that you are using. This cardboard is variable sizes, each one's a different. So we're going to measure using your regular ruler how thick the cardboard is, and then you are going to remove that thickness from either side. So my cardboard is 1/8. I'm actually writing 1/8 on it, so I remember that, and then I'm going to remove 1/8 from either side of my stage deck to account for where the walls are going. Now that I've done that, you can see that my walls fit inside. So our back walls are going to go all the way to the outside. The side walls are going to sit inside the back wall in the proscenium, and that will account for where everything is in space. So now my stage deck is a nice size to work with everything else. So now that I know that my stage deck is right, I'm going to cut my walls. So the walls are going to be the entire depth of the stage, so our measurement from back wall of the proscenium, and then they should match up with the depth of the stage that we just cut. And I'm going to do the same process I did before. I'm going to use my drafting triangles to bring a line down, and I'm going to measure everything out into a nice little rectangle. I'm going to repeat this twice because my walls are going to be identical on stage right and stage left. And once you are done, you should have 2 walls ready to go. Now we should remember that our stage deck is 3 feet raised from the bottom of the auditorium. So I am going to mark a 3-foot line coming up the wall so that I know where to install that stage deck on our walls, and that will help us when we go to glue everything together after we have all of our pieces cut. Just like before, I'm going to rinse and repeat and do the same thing for the other wall because these 2 walls are identical. Next wall to complete is going to be the back wall. So again, this one sits the entire width of the entire model box, so you can use that wider width that you did for your 44 feet. That will go from side to side. It will sit again outside of those walls. Those walls will sit inside the back wall. So you're going to do your 44 feet wide. Now a fun tip. If you've been trying to wonder if you're getting 44 squared, you can check the square of your rectangles by checking the diagonal measurements. So take your walls or your model box floor or whatever and figure out what that measurement is from one corner to the other corner across the diagonal and check to see where it lands. Mine's currently at 11 3/4 of an inch. So if this is correct, then I can check it going the other direction and it will still be 11 3/4 of an inch. If those 2 measurements match, you are all good and your walls are square. By square, I do not mean the fact that they're square and not a rectangle. These are rectangles that are in square. So when I go to cut my back wall, this piece that I am using is an offcut from a previous piece. So I don't need to do the same things I did before where I draw a line and square it up using my triangles. I have 2 square edges at the side as it is. Now I don't want to trust that this is correct, so to confirm it, I'm going to take and I'm going to use my drafting triangle to check that that's in square, and if it lines up and everything's good, I can grab my scale ruler and I can start measuring out my 44 inches for the width of my back wall. So I'm going to measure 44 inches, I'm going to make my tick mark, I'm going to use my triangle to carry that line down, then I'm going to figure out height, which is my 34 feet, and I am going to cut this out. And just like before, I am going to draw my 3-foot line so I know where to install this when I go to glue them all together. Now cutting out my proscenium is going to be similar to the back wall but different because I'm not going to need to fit in and around that apron. So I'm going to have the same general measurements as the back wall. It's going to be 44 feet wide. Again, I'm going to check the material that I have. It looks like it has a square edge, but I'm going to confirm that. And then after that's confirmed, I can do my 44 feet wide by my 34 feet tall. Now that I have that cut out just the right size, I need to do the little cutout around where my proscenium is going to go. For first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to measure my 3 feet up, because if we remember correctly, our apron is 3 feet up. That is why we're making that measurement on all of the other walls. So I'm going to draw my tick marks for the 3 feet, and then I'm going to connect them together. That gives me the line to know how tall the apron area is going to be. Next, I'm going to do the same work that I did before. I'm going to figure out the center point for my line. I'm going to make a mark there. I'm going to figure out the width of my proscenium. It should match what I already have on my stage floor, so I can use that for reference, but it should be 12 feet 6 inches to either side because this piece is going to fit around that section that's sticking out in the front of the proscenium. So go back, make your measurements for your 12 feet 6 inches. And then your 1 foot. Now that you have those drawn, we're going to work on your proscenium opening. So what you need to do is those 1 foot tick marks in that you made are going to be the openings where the apron is. And then the 12'6" is going to be the opening of the proscenium. The proscenium sits a little bit inside of that apron as a picture frame of sorts. So you see me sharpening those lines and making sure that I know where the relationship between the two is. If this is unfamiliar for you, you might want to wait to see what I end up doing and then come back and try doing it along with me. You'll also see that I'm erasing my lines. This is good practice because cleaning up errant lines that you no longer need makes a project cleaner when you're finished. So, as we remember, our height is 13'8". Now let's draw it out and get it ready to cut. Now that I have my opening cut out, I have my proscenium, and then I have, again, the little tiny sides that cut outside the apron. I want to make really sharp, precise corners, so you'll notice that I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, the very, very tip of it, I'm going to plunge it right into that corner. And then you'll notice that I'm not going to continue full down the entire line. I'm going to stop somewhere around the 3/4 mark. I'm going to do my multiple scores, so score it 3 times, 4 times, however many you need for it to feel like it's gone all the way through. And then once you feel confident that you cut all the way through, you're going to flip it around. You're going to start at the other corner. You're going to plunge that very, very sharp point of your X-Acto knife right back into that corner, and then you're going to work backwards. You're going to complete that cut. Make sure that you line it up so that those cut within the same line, and you continue it out. And then you can check on the back to see if you've gone all the way through. Next, you're going to do, I like doing the little tiny ones first, because if I cut those guys out, then I can go back and I can cut that long line with confidence that the entire thing's going to pop out. So I'm cutting out my tiny little guys that bump out around the sides of the apron. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the tiny little corners that fit around the top of the apron. Again, just until I feel like it's gone through. I'm going to flip it around and do it again. And then after I'm finished with that, I'm going to cut out the rest of the proscenium with the same technique I did before. You always want to double check your work, so if this has turned out nicely, you are going to fit tight and snug in and around that. You will see how, again, you have about a 1 foot cut in that mimics what we see on that paper for how the proscenium fits alongside the apron and the stage deck, and we fit right at that 3-foot line nicely. Now I'm going to make sure that that 3-foot line is drawn all the way across because I missed that earlier because I will need that mark when I glue. So I'm drawing in those 3-foot lines now. So now you should have all your model making pieces cut. So you should have your floor for the entire thing. You should have your stage deck that again sits inside of your model making thing with space for either wall on either side. You have your back wall that fits right there. You have your side walls, so starting with your stage left and then your stage right. It doesn't hurt to label all these, so if you want to have them labeled, that'll only help you out. I like to label them underneath that 3-foot line where they'll never be seen. And then you have your proscenium that fits in the front, and you're done. You can check it against what you have on your paper, and then you'll notice that we do have little walls that go alongside the apron. We will add those in after the entire thing is finished.